Have you ever walked into a meeting ready to help make the decision, only to realize the decision had already been made somewhere you were not invited? Everyone nods. Someone says, "As we discussed." You look around wondering who "we" is and whether they have a group chat with better dental benefits. You were included in the calendar event. You were not included in the decision. That difference feels personal. Sometimes it is political, but often the real mechanism is simpler. Important decisions rarely begin in the room where they become official. They begin in small conversations where people reduce uncertainty, test reactions, and build enough support to avoid being surprised in public. This is the pre-meeting network. If you only show up when the formal meeting starts, you may be arriving after the social part of the decision is over. The good news is that you do not need to become manipulative, fake, or mysteriously available beside the executive coffee machine. You need to understand how early access is created, what signals keep people outside it, and how to enter the decision process before the chairs fill up. Formal meetings look like places where choices happen. There is an agenda, a screen, and at least one person saying, "Let's take a step back," while taking 17 steps sideways. But public disagreement is expensive. A leader who presents an untested idea risks resistance, embarrassment, and a 40-minute debate about a detail nobody cared about yesterday. So people socialize the decision first. They ask a trusted colleague, "Would your team support this?" They show a draft to the person most likely to object. They quietly learn which constraint will kill the proposal. By the time the official meeting begins, the risky questions have been answered, and the supporters already recognize the plan. This is not always a secret conspiracy. It is often uncertainty management. People prefer a decision that has survived several private conversations over an idea appearing cold in a crowded room. Familiarity feels safer. Prior support feels like evidence. Silence from key people feels dangerous. The meeting then becomes a stage for confirming alignment, not creating it. If nobody seeks your reaction beforehand, your knowledge may arrive too late to shape the path. Why are some people pulled into those early conversations while others receive the polished slide deck? First, response risk. If people cannot predict whether you will become defensive, dismissive, or turn a 2-minute check into a courtroom closing argument, they wait until the formal room provides structure. You may be completely reasonable. But if your only visible reactions happen when stakes are high, people have too little evidence about how you handle unfinished thinking. Second, context distance. People invite whoever already understands the background. If every conversation with you requires a 10-minute recap, including you, feels slower, even when your judgment is excellent. Third, relationship thinness. Trust is not only liking someone, it is knowing how they think, what they care about, and whether they will protect a half-formed idea instead of announcing it as breaking news. This creates an unfair-looking loop. You are excluded because you lack context. You lack context because you are excluded. Then your surprise in the meeting is interpreted as proof that you were not close enough to the work. The loop feeds itself until being informed late begins to look normal. Most capable employees respond by making their formal contributions stronger. They prepare more evidence. Build cleaner slides, wait for the perfect opening. Then, in the meeting, they reveal the issue nobody considered. Sometimes this works, often it creates a status problem. By the formal meeting, people are no longer evaluating only the idea. They are also protecting the alignment they already built. Your correction may be accurate, but accepting it publicly now costs everyone more. The sponsor has to reverse direction. Supporters have to explain why they agreed too early. The room has to reopen a process it believed was finished. So your useful information gets treated like disruption. That is why saying, "Nobody asked me," rarely improves access. It describes the injury after the decision instead of changing the conditions before the next one. You do not solve late inclusion by performing harder at the final stage. You solve it by becoming useful earlier, when uncertainty is still allowed. Start with the decision map. For any project that matters, identify 3 roles: who owns the decision, who can block it, and who carries the consequences after it is made. Those people do not need a campaign speech. They need small, useful contact before the proposal hardens. Try. I know the team is considering changes to the client process. What constraint are you most worried about? That question does 3 things. It shows context, it lowers response risk, and it gives the other person a reason to include you without making the conversation about your exclusion. Then offer a small piece of value. I have the support data from the last rollout. I can send the 2 patterns that caused the most rework. Do not demand a seat in every conversation. Become the person whose information improves the conversation, and build contact while nothing is on fire. A 5-minute check-in after a project, a thoughtful follow-up, or a useful question creates familiarity before the next urgent decision. Early access is usually earned in low-stakes moments, then used in high-stakes ones. Sometimes you will still discover the decision late. Do not begin with, "Why wasn't I consulted?" Even when deserved, it forces the room to defend the process before it can hear your information. Join the goal first. I understand we are trying to shorten the launch timeline. There is one downstream constraint that may change the sequence. Now you are not attacking the decision, you are protecting its outcome. If the room cannot reopen the choice, ask for the smallest reversible adjustment. Could we test this with one client group before we apply it across the full account base? Afterward, have the access conversation privately and specifically. For future changes that affect implementation, could you loop me in when the first options are being compared? I can flag delivery risks before the recommendation is finalized. Notice what this avoids. You are not asking to be included because exclusion hurt. You are connecting earlier inclusion to a better decision, then follow through. Respond calmly to rough drafts, protect confidential thinking, bring concise context. People invite back the person who makes uncertainty easier to manage. Being left out does not always mean people doubt your intelligence. Sometimes they have never experienced your judgment early enough to rely on it. Before the meeting, map the decision and offer useful context. During it, join the goal before challenging the route. After it, request earlier involvement around a specific consequence you can improve. The goal is not access to every private conversation. That would be exhausting, and eventually you would become the person hiding from your own calendar. The goal is to be present while the decision is still soft enough to change. If every meeting begins with "as we discussed" and nobody discussed it with you, you are not attending a decision meeting, you are attending the season finale. If this described your workplace a little too accurately, subscribe to Office Tells, and tell me in the comments what phrase lets you know the real meeting happened before you arrived.